Okay, so welcome to Satsang. So in satsang is a meeting of truth. And in order to meet in such a manner, it is helpful to, as you inhale, when you exhale, you don't just exhale the breath, but you also exhale your entire knowingness, your entire knowledge, all your entire day, your memories, your thoughts, your feelings. Just exhale everything, so that you can be in more in presence, more in your nakedness, in your transparency. Less stuff on board, just to simply be. So the topic that I wanted to address today, to a certain extent, is a topic that we had touched upon last meeting, which was the topic of healing and healing old wounds and healing old traumas. But before, just a reminder that whenever you have a question, you're welcome to pose your question or write your question in the chat box. And if you are watching on YouTube, you can write whatever questions, a brief question that you have in the chat box on YouTube, and Tara will bring them to my attention. So just a few words about wounds and healing old wounds and experiencing old wounds, and then we can, if there are any questions, we can discuss that together. So as consciousness, from the point of view of consciousness, from the point of view of the reality of our experience, because the reality of our experience is not thought, is not memory. The reality of our experience is not a sensation, it's not a feeling. But the reality of our experience is awareness, consciousness, presence. So from the point of view of the reality of our experience, meaning from the point of view of consciousness, there are no wounds, there are no traumas. There is no past and no future. And therefore, from the point of view of consciousness, meaning from the point of view of the reality of our experience, there is nothing that requires healing. Because consciousness is not in time. It does not exist in time. It does not exist in the past or in the future. It is eternal. And not in time. Having said that, it is not my intention to deny or encourage you to deny that you may be experiencing some trauma or some old wounds that haunt you, that keep arising for you. And so the question is, how do we, from our contemplation, how do we approach the situation? So if you ask yourself, how do I experience, or what is my experience of an old wound? And you ask yourself this question and you look within yourself, you will find that your experience of an old wound is memory or an image or a thought. And it is accompanied with a feeling. So a certain image arises for you. It could be an image of something that occurred for you in the past with your family or with some friends or different situations. This memory or this image arises and you immediately experience that feeling, that emotion that you experienced so many times before. And you're experiencing it freshly again now, but it's not so fresh because it's actually a repeating emotion. Because in fact, in the absence of the thought, in the absence of the memory, you're relatively okay. But you are not completely okay. Because even when the memory of an old wound does not arise, you are not 100% okay, because there is a memory within your body. There is a certain something stored within your body, a certain attitude, a certain knot, a certain contraction that has somehow settled within your body. And you got so used to it, you don't notice it, but it's there. So our experience of an old wound is a current thought and a current emotion. Now, the thought and the emotion arise with conviction. It may have in it a certain statement about you, that you deserved better, that this should not have happened to you, that this should not have happened to certain members of your family, or this should not have happened to certain members of your tribe. But in fact, all this stuff happened and may be still happening. And there are a lot of very unhappy things happening throughout the entire planet. We all know that. And it's been going on forever and may still go on. It seems that all the indications are there that the miserable relationships among human beings is going to be ongoing. But in general, we're okay with all the stuff happening, but we are not okay about certain specific situations that have happened. And why is that? There are miserable things happening in so many parts of the country, many parts of the world. And overall, we don't like it, but we're okay. But something may have happened between you and your brother or your sister or your mother, and that drives you crazy. Or something may have happened to your tribe or a certain group that you're identified with, and that drives you crazy. It haunts you and troubles you. Why is that? How is it that there are so many awful things happening everywhere, and you're relatively okay, and certain specific things have happened, and they drive you crazy? It's a good question to ask yourself. I remember many years ago, I used to be identified with a certain political point of view. And it used to make me very unhappy because I could see so many miserable things happening specific to that group that I identified with. And it used to really affect me. I used to get very depressed and upset and irritated and feelings of despair and powerlessness. I wanted things to be different. And it haunted me for a few years, maybe a few decades. And I kept on wondering how, I understood that there is misery throughout the entire planet. How is it that this particular thing is driving me so insane? And one day I realized, which in a way I knew it, that I was identified, that I had a certain identification with that belief, with that group, with that. I had a me identity. And the me was that I was a member of this tribe. And this tribe was being wronged. So I was being wronged, and my brothers and sisters were being wronged because I identified with them. Although I knew that I was identified, somehow I couldn't free myself from it until one day I was just free of it. And I was very amazed. How come I was suddenly free of something that had haunted me for a few decades, and I was just free just like that? And I really don't know the answer to this question. But what I know is that I was interested in truth. I wasn't interested in maintaining my identification. I was interested in getting beyond this identification and realizing what I knew was a universal truth, that there is one reality, which is consciousness. And consciousness has no name and no age. It is not Christian, Muslim, or Buddhist. It is not male or female. It is not a mother or a father or a son or a daughter. Although I knew that, I still suffered from certain identifications. So it's not easy to free yourself or to become free from the past, from past traumas, from past wrongs, from old identifications. Because although you may understand that what you truly are is beyond all that, there is a deeper imprint of all these old beliefs. And this deeper imprint is in your being, not so much in your thoughts, but also in your being. I understood, and I share with you understanding that above all, what matters is your intention. Your intention to awaken to the truth, no matter what. Although you may be experiencing certain unhappiness as a result of old traumas and old wrongs, although that may be arising for you, to remain steadfast in your intention to awaken to truth, and not to maintain your old beliefs, and not to maintain your old feelings, and not to defend and justify. You have to be watchful of what you say and what you do. So often I used to get together with my family, a large family, and we used to talk about the past, to repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. How great this was, how great this person was, and how awful this other person was. And in this repetition, in this very careless way of speaking, the imprints of the separate mind were dug in deeper and deeper. And we do that within ourselves too, not necessarily in meeting with our families and friends. Also being alone with our own, we repeat those thoughts about how bad this was and how good this was, the good versus the bad. And in repeating these thoughts and maintaining these thoughts, that's the me. That's the separate self right there. Him and her and me, the good and the bad, separating that is inseparable. The separate self is this inner conversation and outer conversation that also settles itself in our feeling state, makes deeper roots in our body-mind. So the journey is a journey of returning to presence and living transparently, living with a very light imprint, very, very light, not engaging in these repetitive thoughts that we've been maintaining for years and years that define us and define the other as separate beings, as limited beings. Although consciousness does not know any such things as all traumas, we do. We maintain those old traumas in our thinking, in our conversations, in our definitions, defining ourselves and defining the other. While we know that consciousness is beyond any definition, yet we continue to define ourselves and to define others. We continue to have images and ideas about me, myself, and the other. Poor me, what happened to me? Why did it happen? Why did it happen to me? Why did this happen to me? We make these images via these thoughts and conversations. And these images and conversations, they have quite an impact. They are not innocent. And they're empty. They're really empty. But they're not empty when you are repeating them and conducting them and maintaining them. They take a life of their own. They haunt you. Because these images, they're the you. They are the separate self. You feel that that's what you are, and you experience that that's what you are. And they may be fallacious, totally empty and untrue. I think I shared with some of you how when I was a young boy, I experienced this traumatic experience, and for many, many decades, it kept on coming back to me. And I used to share it with everybody. Oh yeah, this happened to me, this happened to me, it happened to me, it was awful, awful, oh, poor me, it was really awful. And one day in my meditation, I had a flash. I realized it was like a déjà vu experience. I saw that in fact this experience had not happened to me. This trauma had not happened to me, but had happened to my brother, one of my brothers. Obviously, it was still traumatic to me because I impersonated that it happened to me. But it was quite sobering to realize that what I felt was so absolutely true. I would swear about that's what happened. In fact, had not happened to me. I had witnessed it, but from a distance. It was happening to one of my brothers. It's still a trauma, of course, to witness somebody else experiencing unhappiness. But the point is that these thoughts and images and memories they're so shifting. And the more we hold on to them, and the more we repeat them, the more they morph into bigger and bigger and bigger monsters. While when we remain still and silent and quiet, realizing the eternity of presence that is free from past and future, is a completely different game. Of course, there are some traumas that still remain in the body, but the non-dual contemplation is not about completely freeing the body from all traumas. It's not, or even partially. It's about awakening to truth, the revelation of the self. And as a matter of fact, as you awaken to truth, as you realize more and more that you are the transparency of being, effortlessly, the body also becomes more and more transparent. And the awakening to truth, the awakening to the self, is this awakening to I am, this borderless presence, I am universal consciousness. And simultaneously, at the body level, noticing the openness and inviting the openness and recognizing the borderlessness of the body, the vastness of the body. So that whatever is arising, past and present and future, whatever is arising in this spaciousness, in this borderless spaciousness. But it's not about becoming completely free of all traumas. Because at the muscular level, at the cellular level, there is some memory that becomes more and more transparent. It fades out of the cells. It becomes thinner and thinner at the body level as you remain in presence, as you remain as presence, as you recognize the presence that you are. So indirectly, the old traumas also dissolve out of your being. There may be something remaining here and there, but not a big deal. And what's important is not to create more and more wounds. All trauma and all wounds arise from ignorance, arise from relating with each other and with oneself as a separate person. I am separate from you. I am this, I am that. You are this, you are that. Can we let this go and be transparent, undefined, and without the need to define the other, not defining oneself and not defining the other in any way, remaining not knowing. Relating from the deep silence within. Noticing the processes within us, the stuff, the feelings and the judgments and all that's what may be stirring there, and not to be judging of it, to see it. There is wisdom in seeing and remaining still. It's an understanding that to follow that stream of thoughts and that stream of feelings only deepens the sense of separation, deepens the isolation. deepens the angst. So we invite ourselves and we invite the others by our own how we live to be the innocence that we are, the freshness, the not knowing, aware presence that needs not know, that is not looking for anything, that just is resting and restful being presence. No need for the images. Let them be. Don't push them away, don't grab them, don't fight with them. Just let them be. They're just like the weather, like the wind. Nothing defines you. Okay, so if you have any questions.
Magdi?
Hello, Zoe.
Hi. Wow, this really is perfect timing. I was in a group situation the other day, lots of activity, meeting a lot of new people, and um, a guy gave me a compliment that triggered, it's like a lot of unease in me. And I was sitting there contemplating that, and it came to this realization, sort of like what you just shared, that shock of like, oh my goodness, my reaction has absolutely nothing to do with this person, with this, it was just like seeing that image rise up of him saying something, and then my reaction rising up like in a whole nother instant was completely unrelated to him. But the storm of habit, tendencies, contractions in the body that arose with that. And I guess listening to you now, I know that the contemplation helped, but it was like I had to get out of the situation. In the situation, I felt my body just going into this familiar pattern of, avoidance and contraction. And, it all looks very normal on the outside, but on the inside, I was so aware that I was in this habit pattern. Um, yeah, can you, should, I guess what I'm wondering is, when there's that much activity, uh, I almost think, okay, well then I just need to excuse myself so that I don't um, put this negative energy on another human being. Because even though it was very subtle, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm avoiding this person, rejecting them.
Mhm. we react, the entire organism reacts when an image that somehow even we may not even be noticing that we are harboring is poked at.
Yeah.
It's because in fact what we are, meaning the imageless self, isn't affected by a compliment or an insult. But something does.
Yeah.
Obviously you can feel it, you can sense it, like as you are describing, you're being the entire body mind, something happens. There is something that is touched. If that fellow had touched somebody or something else, most likely it would not have fazed you.
Right.
But something that is close to your identity was touched, and so it affected you. But the formless self that you are is not what was touched, because that is beyond the praise or insult. And if there was an image that you had that you are not identified with, that you really you don't care about, it's just one way or the other, and somebody pokes at it, whichever way they poke at it, it won't faze you too much. But something that you hold to be dear, when that is praised, you're happy, well, or that's then it's different. You're quite susceptible, and it's fascinating to look at this process of identification that we have, that is identifying with what are we defending or safeguarding, or what is it that is touched? It's what is it that is at stake? Because we know that the body is on its way, it's inevitable. It's just a few more decades and it will be dust. And we know the mind, images and thoughts, that like dissolving and changing, and so obviously that could not be what we are truly defending and holding on to. How could, that would be ludicrous. But we do ludicrous things in ignorance. We identified with ghosts, and we're defining ghosts, and we have images. They're deeply within our body mind. They're within our muscles, within our nervous systems, within our cells. And when we notice this inner turmoil, at that moment, the false self is engaged, and it's fleeing, fighting, or hiding, whatever in the process that it does. So it doesn't matter that you leave the situation or don't leave the situation, but what's more fascinating is to see this process and notice this process and recognize that it's not about what you are. It's there is something else going on. And that something else is not thought. Something else is not born, is not visible, is not sustainable, is not affected. And that the more you identify with the feelings and the emotions, when you don't take that standing back in a way, and the reasoning, there is a certain stillness. And it's not about getting to feel better. It's just like a pause in that stream. And you don't know what's going on. And that's okay. Because in a way, figuring it out is at the mind level. And there is another level which you can refer to it as truth or love or being. That's beyond the mind, that it's more being. And at that level, all is well. The freedom is there. It's at that not knowing, but being. There's certain transparency about being. we find that there is more and more space, more and more transparency. And there may be events in certain situations that may trigger us. And they're referring to some remaining, some form of identity that's traces of it, or some appearance of it. But everything that appears to the reality of being, to I, to you, to presence, to awareness. And so that is the absolute witness.
And as you were sharing before, so this particular tendency of this body mind, it just may keep doing this. Like you said, not all of the vasanas are released.
Right. Now, you will find that the bulk of it will. And there may be some areas that maybe some situations will never arise that will trigger them out. Or maybe they will. But the bulk of the identity, the structures in the body will release. Let's say 99.9% will release, but there will still be 1% or 0.1%. And what may remain would be very thin. And if it arises, it will arise like a spark, not like a fire. So yes, it will reduce, in the reactions and the emotions will reduce, will become less and less as you recognize in yourself more and more as awareness, as presence, as borderless beingness, as that one reality. Then there is a transparency, and there is a thinning out, a natural thinning out. And whenever something arises in the body-mind, so you invite it to dissolve in the space. Like we in the retreat, some of the yogas, you expand, you open your body, your belly, your shoulders, the space, and allow the sensation. Just recognize the sensation to be arising and expanding in the space in all directions. That helps to expedite the process.
Okay.
That would become more important for you as a sadhana than the contemplation of what am I.
Ah, okay.
So in your living situation, in your life, like the example you gave, to maybe that was too big, but in smaller ways, when something arises, sometimes things arise that are too much to handle, and then whatever, doesn't matter.
Mm.
So you practice with the smaller things, the smaller. It doesn't matter if you're practicing with something that is stirring you quite a bit or just a little bit. What matters is the practice, is the sadhana, is the yoga. You could do it with being irritated because you went to a cafe and the coffee wasn't hot enough. Okay, and it irritates you just a little bit.
Mm.
So you practice with that, this irritation, this teeny tiny irritation. Why can they serve the coffee just at the right temperature? Them idiots, you know. Yes, you're feeling that, so you invite that. You notice, you turn attention to where in the body it's tightening, it's holding. It could be in the hands, in the face, in the eyes, in the neck, in the shoulders, in the belly. It's big, maybe tiny, minute. Doesn't matter. Then you invite it into the spaciousness of awareness, yes?
Mm. Thank you, Magdi.
Okay, Zoe.
Hi, Magdi.
Hello, Maria.
Hi. Magdi, I was listening to the conversation with Zoe and about reactions that come up that are still stuck in the body. Now, the part of me that notices when this is occurring, would that be conscious awareness? Or could that be just a thought? Because oftentimes I feel the contractions or the sensations, and my mind wants to go to analyze it. And then there's another voice that's saying, don't analyze, just stay with the sensation.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, is that consciousness, or is that just a thought about a thought?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another thought that's coming up questioning whether that's a thought that's questioning a
Right,
thought.
right,
Uh-huh.
right.
Yeah, maybe you can
So,
help me.
yes.
Uh-huh.
So when there is an arising, a certain experience that you're having, we're noticing something, and there is a noticing. And the noticing is not a thought, there is a noticing. So we notice a certain sensation, a certain feeling, or we notice a certain thought. Oh, gee, why did they do something so stupid? I told them 20 times not to do that. And you notice the upsetness. You notice the stirring. So that noticing is pure. There is a pure noticing, but at the mind level, there is an immediate, there is a next thing, because what you're noticing is a certain unhappiness, and the mind is movement, meaning it's just thought, feeling, thought, sensation, thought, feeling. In fact, between every thought, there is a pause, because if there is no pause between thought A and thought B, there would be one thought. We would call it thought A. But in fact, there is a gap between every thought. There is a gap between every sensation. But that gap is void of thought. And because thought is not there, thought says, there is no gap. Because from the point of view of thought, there is no gap because thought was not there, and that cannot witness the gap. Thought can only know thought. So from the impression of thought, there is thought. So oh yeah, it's a thought about that, thought about that, thought about that, thought about that thought. So when there is a certain experience that you are having, and we have a certain familiarity with noticing, meaning we are aware of awareness. When we are aware of awareness, it's not a thought. It's just awareness being aware of itself. So you're aware that you're aware, and you're aware that you're aware of the thought. To be aware of the thought that is not a thought is awareness. And to be aware that you're aware of the thought, that is not a thought as well. That is awareness of awareness. Or you can say awareness of a thought. But it's awareness. Whenever there is, in general, in ignorance, whenever there is an unhappy thought and unhappy feeling that arises because they arise together, they're co-arising, whenever the separate self arises, thought wants to gets on steroids. Thought gets on steroids. Says, "Oh, let's. We don't want to feel that. So let's blame somebody. Let's accuse somebody, or let's try to analyze it, or let's try to formulate a theory about it, or let's ignore it and think about something nicer, like, for example, traveling to the Bahamas." So whenever there is unhappiness, whenever the separate self arises, in ignorance, thought arises to sweep the unhappiness under the rug. You have to be able to notice that within yourself. To notice within yourself when you are avoiding presence, avoiding the stillness. Because something unhappy is arising. It's possible to notice how you start to wiggle and jiggle your way out, as if there was something at stake. That discrimination is a very important discrimination for you to contemplate in your life. To start to notice the thieves that are arising within yourself, telling you, the liars that are arising within yourself, that are telling you, oh, there is danger, there is danger, there is danger. Move, move, move. There is no danger. Remain still, and stillness is presence. Stillness is awareness. It's a non-movement.
So, Magdi,
Yes.
We do have the free will to notice. And when we talk about how we have no free will or volition, there is, when we do the practice or when we
I'm
do
sorry,
this,
Maria. I never talk about we don't have a free will. That's not my teaching.
okay.
I never say that. I only say as a separate self, there is no free will to the separate self. Like Santa Claus, the free will of Santa Claus. I never speak about there is no free will.
Okay. Oh, that's great for you to
There is
clarify.
absolute free will for consciousness is complete freedom. So freedom, creativity, consciousness conceives, creates, perceives, and destroys. That is absolute free will. So, free will of consciousness, yes. Okay, just wanted to, I mean, continue with what you were saying, but I just wanted to make that little note so that
Great.
we don't confuse the teaching.
Great. So as a separate self, there's no free will. When I'm noticing, when I notice and I'm in stillness, could I then say the separate self is being paused? Like there's a pause button to the separate self.
When you are in stillness, yes, you could say that there is no separate self. I wouldn't say that separate self has been paused. I would say that, in fact, in stillness, there is no separate self. The separate self arises as thoughts, images, and sensations. For example, the thought, oh my God, how am I doing? Am I doing good? I was doing better last week, for example. That would be the separate self. But in stillness, there is no thought. So yes, I would say that in stillness, there is no separate self. But I would not say it has been paused. I would say that there is no separate self.
Period. Right.
Period.
It's not like there's something that's been put in pause, because there isn't. Because the separate self is the movement of thought, of feelings. So
right, in stillness, there is no, as long as we're not talking about some concept called stillness, in actual stillness, there is no thought. There is just being awareness.
There could be no thought, but there could still be sensations that awareness is then perceiving. And there's the noticing of that.
I would say that in stillness, there could be sensation when you, meaning you, the stillness, when the stillness turns its attention towards the sensation. For example, right now, let's just notice the stillness, notice presence, and let's turn our attention to the sensation of our feet on the ground. Yes? Can we do that?
Yes.
So we turn our attention to the sensation of our feet on the ground, just the sensation. We don't know it, we have no name for it, but we turn our attention towards it. So as we do that, I would say that yes, in stillness, there can be sensation when the stillness decides to turn its attention towards a sensation. You follow?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But stillness may just decide to just turn its attention towards the stillness, towards itself. And then it may decide to turn its attention towards the feeling, the sensation of the fingers. And then it may decide to turn its attention towards the stillness, towards itself. So I would say that in terms of a sadhana, first notice the stillness and turn your attention, meaning turn the attention of stillness towards the stillness itself. Don't bother so much about turning your attention towards the sensation. And if you decide to turn your attention towards the sensation, meaning stillness decides to turn its attention to the sensation, turn your attention to the sensation without labeling it, without naming it. And notice the emptiness and the transparency of the sensation. Meaning, go to the sensation and allow the sensation to reveal its true nature, which is the stillness itself. And it's better that we do that during the retreats, so you can get a feeling of it. But anyways, that's the theory of it.
Yes. It's in the mornings I sit and I do sadhana, and I have this noise in my head, I guess. It says abide in stillness, or abide in pure awareness. And when I sit down and it feels like awareness, to abide in awareness, I have to allow awareness to be aware of whatever is present. So there's like sounds or sensations or even thoughts or whatever that's present. And I know that's like directing awareness towards an object instead of towards itself, or like stillness towards stillness itself. And I guess I don't quite know how to do that.
Okay, so it's okay to do that. You turn your attention towards the sounds and the sensations that are arising around you or in awareness. Yes, that's fine.
Yeah.
So that's the first part of the sadhana. Continue the sadhana by noticing that these sounds, for example, they're arising within you.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And that you are an undefined, I was going to say container, but that's not the right word, an undefined field of awareness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's okay, you can turn your attention towards the objects or the experiences that are arising and continue by noticing that yes, these objects that are arising, these sounds, these forms, these perceptions, are arising in me. Me being this vast field of awareness, this borderless field of awareness. Don't worry about awareness being aware of itself. Just do it. It's just as I said, in experiencing the vastness of awareness that is hearing these sounds, or that is perceiving these thoughts. There's nothing wrong with the thoughts. So you're turning your attention to the thought, but then notice that this thought is arising within a vaster field of awareness that I am.
It's beautiful. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Okay, Maria. Nothing happens to the I am. Nothing happens to awareness. Any questions?
Hi, Magdi.
Hello, Anne.
It's not really about old wounds, but something just came up as you were speaking. Sometimes when I'm sat just being or sitting in silence, and it's really lovely because I just feel like there's just an expansion of drifting into silence and a feeling of expansion. But sometimes, quite often, there's another thing that happens that is really quite, well, I don't know what word to call it really, it's quite exquisite in that it feels like it's either in my heart area or in my belly area. And I don't know what words to put to it, but it's really fascinating. Mm-hmm. It's like I just go into that area, mm-hmm. and it's like sort of like warm honey or another thing it sort of feels like is maybe like it's turning in, it's like something's turning inside out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I just wondered if you know what that is, because mm-hmm. it's sort of quite mysterious. It's mm-hmm. I don't know what to think of it really.
It's good that you don't know what to think of it, but it seems that you want to know what to think of it.
Yeah, I do. It just fascinates me. And I'm thinking, I just think, what is that? You know, what is that?
Well, think of it as a sweet release, a sweet melting, a sweet dissolution, a think of it as a place where everything comes into the sweetness, drains into it. If you want to think of it. But maybe it's best to just remain not knowing. I would add, although I don't feel that it's necessary, but I will add it anyways as a general note, to not seek it, but as it arises, it's very sweet, very nice. And not, I don't mean to say that you are, attaching yourself to it or forming any notion of yourself around it. I don't mean to say that you're doing that, but I just would say that in general, not to define anything around it, just to sort of leave it as it is, enjoy it.
Yeah, I do enjoy it. And you just reminded me another thing about it that I didn't mention is sometimes it feels like it's going somewhere, but it never gets there. It's like as if something's going to burst, but it never bursts.
Simply remain attending, remain in presence as presence. And it will get where it needs to go.
That's good, thank you. Can I just ask one more question? Sometimes when you talk about, you mentioned it earlier, when you're talking about witnessing things and things appearing, like our thoughts, feelings that appear, and just to stay as the stillness and witness it. And I have a bit of confusion and dilemma with that sometimes because I don't know if it's just my mind doing this, but I always think, isn't that too? Because then there's a witness and something that's appearing. And I just think, I just get confused by that because it seems like that's duality, that's two things.
Right. Yeah. So when you are in your night dreams, you are dreaming that there is a pink flying elephant. In fact, you are witnessing this dream, you are witnessing these images, you are witnessing these sensations without effort. It just is so. It is so. You are witnessing these images and these sensations. And yet these images and these sensations are not apart from you, right?
Yes.
So you're witnessing yourself as these images, but there is no duality because the image and you are one, right?
Yeah.
So witnessing doesn't necessarily imply duality. Witnessing is, one could say, one of the ways one could speak about consciousness. Like one could speak about the elephant by holding their foot, their leg, and saying that's a tree trunk. Or, well, that's the elephant. By pointing to the tree trunk, like shape of their leg. So you may also be speaking about the tail of the elephant as a branch of, or a twig or something like that. And it may seem to be duality, but in fact, it's not duality, because they are both, the leg and the tail are the elephant, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in fact, duality is a myth. Witnessing does not imply duality. Duality is the belief that there is duality. So duality is the belief that there is a separate self, that I am here and you are there. I as the reality of what I am is here, and the reality of what you are is there. That the real I is here, and another real I is somewhere else. Duality is the belief and the feeling that I am a limited body mind, and there is an external world, an external reality, and an internal reality. There is an internal and external reality. That's duality. In fact, there isn't an internal and external duality. That's all mind. Because in our experience, we don't experience internal and external. Only in thought, we experience our internal and external thought as a content of thought. But in our experience, there is no such thing. But although it is a fact that in our experience there is no internal and external, it is not enough to hear that. You have to contemplate the deep meaning of what is being said, which is one pointer among many others, until the root, the seed of ignorance within you is obliterated. Until it is obliterated, the potential of duality and of separation continues within you. Okay?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, Anne.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Well, thank you very much for your lovely company and your friendship and your love for truth. Very lovely to be with you all.
Thank you, Maggie.
Okay, Zoe, Paul, yes, namaste. Gabby, John, Holly. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Okay.